A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 131st episode of the Together for Education webinar brought to you by Notebook. More than a year ago in April 2020, when the lockdown had just started, the pandemic had just set in, online education was quickly becoming very, very important. We at Notebook felt it was our responsibility to put together this platform where educators would come and discuss the various issues that they were facing and commonly arrive at solutions. Little did we know that more than a year later, I would be inviting all of you to the 131st episode. And for this wonderful journey that we have had so far, I have only you to thank. It is your love and appreciation that has kept us going. Over this year and a half, we have discussed a myriad range of topics. We have spoken about the curricular, the extracurricular, about mental health, about a variety of issues. Today, however, we look at a certain aspect which has plagued the impressionable youth in our country and perhaps the world over for quite some time now. As medical science progressed, we invented ways to use chemicals to our advantage, to alter physical psychology, the body physiology, and various other aspects of human existence that would help us treat illnesses, manage pain, do a lot of things better. The unfortunate fallout was that certain set of people realized that certain chemicals altered our brain chemistry in a very different way. Well, while adults and the more sensible would not fall as easily as the youth to prey to such devices, the impressionable youth was the worst casualty. Looking for ways to look cooler, to make their lives more fun, or do things just to fit in, drugs became the bane of an entire generation. Well, while it is perhaps not as bad as what it used to be, it is still a huge issue that plagues large parts of our country. Today, we look at the drug menace. To speak more about this, our first speaker today is Mr. Philip Burrett. Mr. Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. Mr. Burrett served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Activities, Dean of Student Welfare, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Burrett qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist, and someone who works tirelessly for the cause of getting the youth of our country rid of the drug problem. Sir, privileged to have you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Shubhayu. Am I audible because you're a little soft today? I don't know.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Must be my microphone.
Thank you so much. A very good evening to all of you, including all my friends at Notebook in Calcutta. In all the webinars that I have been a part of, and as Shubhayu just mentioned, we covered the whole plethora of subjects. I might have added something to the conversation as being an experienced teacher. But when it comes to topics like this morning's or this evening's topic, I sometimes feel that children know far more about substance and drugs than we teachers know. And so, somehow as I grew up in a family which nurtured me out of love and developed in me a love for sport and spiritual leanings, I escaped the entire temptation to delve into the world of psychedelic substances. I remained unscathed. But when I grew up in the 60s, Vietnam was happening and the Doors, Hendrix were on the charts and Apocalypse Now was, all the rage. I did read Carlos Castaneda. I read Timothy Leary, the beat poets like William Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac. All these people were doing the masculine thing on the Californian coast. But I was happy to be well moored in my foundations because of the family I came from. And when I was in college, I could get the acrid smell of weed from all the rooms that I, passed. But I somehow escaped the whole drug scene of the 60s. I'm not going to talk about the various classes of drugs and other psychotropic substances, because all that is available online. I'm just going to talk about my experiences in 4 decades as a teacher. First of all, drugs have been around from time immemorial. from the medievals and the Romans who, drank their wine and mead. And then opium, of course, came in from the Far East. And then later, the marijuana, the LSD, heroin, cocaine, and other additives. Today, when you talk about substances, it is rampant. Everyone is doing it out there. They're either smoking or popping pills or mainlining or snorting, and it's not just school kids. It's every walk of society. If you're very, very wealthy, you're on coke. If you're slightly poorer, you're on cough syrups or brown sugar or prescription, over-the-counter drugs. Urchins on the street are using glue and paint thinner. So let's not bluff ourselves. It's out there, and all the drug enforcement and all the police forces of the world have not been able to stop it because it's big money, it's big business. Our job is as teachers is to make sure that we educate the children in not using it. I also feel that the inquisitiveness of adolescents and their need to take risks and push their boundaries to establish an image for themselves and to be, of course, accepted by the peer groups and experiment, this is very, very important and strong in adolescents. They also want to alter states of consciousness. They'll try all sorts of stuff, even the hanging game, as they played in Eton and other public schools. It's a dangerous game, but it gives you a buzz, an adrenaline rush. Now, it also drugs makes them feel grown up. It's what they see on TV. They're superstars. Their actors do it. Even their sports heroes. They're all into substances. When I became a teacher and I had to face the drug menace head on, I had to guard against being too judgmental and taking on this holier than thou stance. If I was going to help children get past addiction, I had to be something else. I was not going to be a policeman or a law enforcer. My job and expertise was in educating children to keep away from the drugs. I wasn't a spy. I was not going to spy and nab and catch them and lay traps for them just to show them that I was smarter than them, because that only leads to this cat and mouse game. And in boarding school, it's very easy to be trapped in this. As a teacher, I had to educate myself if I was going to mentor these children. So what I did was I read about drugs. I read about how their pupils dilate and certain drugs make their pupils, their pupils get smaller, contracted. Some creates more energy, they're more bubbly, sometimes they go to sleep. I also learned when they ingest it. And I was always a step ahead of these fellows that I had in my house. No, drugs, like any other substances, are addictive. There's so many addictions. And the problem is that once you start, it gets hold of you. And you need more and more to get the same buzz. So if a child tells you that I'm just trying or I'm just experimenting, it's not going to work, because he's going to go on to bigger and bigger and bigger things. And the first thing I learned was that the opposite of addictions is relationships. And so many children who get into drugs are people who are misunderstood, who are alone, who come from broken homes, who didn't care. They come from neglected, they're neglected by their fathers mainly, or from homes where this was accepted. And what these children need is elders to listen to them, to hear their frustrations, to hear their stresses, and to hear that they are forced into doing subjects that they don't like, taking up careers they don't like because of forceful parents. They might want to be musicians and dancers, but they're being forced to become engineers and doctors. And what it needs is the connection with human beings, connected with elders, otherwise they seek refuge in this haze of noxious smoke and chemicals. And what these kids need is compassion and patience from the elders, not judgmental correction. They do not want to be judged. And constant contact with good adults will sometimes, will keep them more moored. Otherwise, they're like ships on a sea with no rudder. Now, the school I worked in had a zero tolerance policy towards drugs. We might have let the smokers and drinkers off with a severe warning as a one strike, But as far as substance was concerned, it was a one-way street. And what this actually did, it got the kids smarter. They went underground, they got more deceptive, they became better liars, and they also hid their stuff in different places. I cannot begin to tell you how clever children become in acquiring, hiding, and using substances. One has to teach in a boarding school to understand this, and the life of a school when the lights go off. The sad part of it is that we had them for 8 months of the year, and we might have kept these children on the straight and narrow. But what happens in the 4 months that they go home and they join these parties, and the society they come from, it accepts this. Otherwise, you're ostracized from the group that you're in. Now, I got very close to children. I had to interact more. I had to build a relationship where they could trust me and come up to me and even tell me that they needed help. Boys did come and say, "Sir, we've tried this, but I need help. I want to get off it." So we have to be able to get close enough for them to trust us. And they need support. Now, the other thing, of course, is that they learn from adults. They ask questions like, why is drinking and alcohol legal? When drunken drivers kill more people on the road than anything else. They ask, why should marijuana not be legal? Many countries have legalized it. They ask these questions, and we must not shy away from taking these questions head on and speaking the truth. I ran a very tight ship, and I was a strict housemaster, and a lot of parents wanted to put their children into my house just because I drew the boundaries. I told these children that it all starts with smoking tobacco, but it gradually, like any addiction, as I mentioned, gets bigger and bigger, and enough is never enough. And if I had a reputation of running a tight ship, it was because we were also compassionate. I know that I had boys out of school, out of my house within 24 hours. But when this happened, I know it was to protect the other 99 of the house. It was always a sad day for me. It was sad when I saw these boys having to pack up and leave. It was in a way a failure of mine, a failure of my personal failure and the school's failure. Yes, of course, the menace that schools face is everywhere. It's supplied by auto rickshaw drivers, school support staff, the chaiwalas, shop next door that's ostensibly selling chips. He can also sell it. The police, in many cases, are involved, are in league. I've made so many complaints. The school made so many complaints to the police, but nothing happens. The taxi drivers, the problem is enormous. And what we need to do is get the policies out there, get addiction policies, substance abuse policies, alcohol, tobacco, get these policies out there so that the children know where they stand. What really helps in the long run is the children have to be made accountable. The strict consequences for trying psychedelic substances has to be made very clear. Some teachers tend to be ambivalent about it. And so the children get mixed messages and very, ambiguous messages. I think it's going to be out there clear that this is not allowed. The other thing, of course, is we need the counselors in school. Mostly schools need counselors to tell them about the potential dangers and how they get involved and the problems faced. Good teachers need to be role models. You can't have teachers coming to school smelling of alcohol, preaching about drugs being bad. I think also, especially at boys, we need to give them something bigger that they must believe in, something bigger. I'm not talking about a religion so much as, the clubs, the higher purpose. The Boy Scouts helped a lot, the Red Cross, community service helps a lot. Boys love to have something bigger to give their lives to, give their souls to. Otherwise, they just dabble in these sort of excitement, drugs. Also, I think giving them a love for sport, a love for the value of being healthy is important. As I sat on their beds, I would ask them about their posters that they put up. And children speak a lot through the posters. So I would talk to them about Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison and Bob Marley, Kurt Cobain, and also tell them that, that all these people are long gone, they're dead. Let's listen to their music. But why did they have to go into drugs? So I had a lot of good conversations with children on what posters they put up. And it isn't this connect that they open up to you and they trust you. I think teaching them about the harmful effects on the brain and body, and what it does to you and what it does to you in the long run, I think children learn that. They're health conscious too. I think the biggest drug in the world is a love for sport and fresh air. And it just has been shown that that when you take people off one addiction, you need to substitute it with another addiction, because addiction runs on the genes, it's in the brain. That's why addictions run in families. So you can't take someone off smoking per se, you got to give them something else. And people take to religion, and people take to sport or yoga or Tai Chi or something or the other. Telling them, I think it's important to educate girls about the use of roofers, which is a very powerful party drug. So when I would talk to boys, I said, how would you like your sister to go to a party and somebody put something into her drink when she was not watching? And when you take roofers, you actually forget for whatever happens to you in the next hour or so. And children and girls are exploited by people who pose to be their friends, but who slip something into their drink. And also, I think as teachers, we need to learn much more about what we're dealing with, because otherwise the children are going to be 10 steps ahead of you, and they're more clued up. Therefore, I would recommend a book called White Magic, which I read a couple of years ago. It's about the menace of drugs and how people get into it. It's written by a man called Arjun Nath, who is a leading criminal lawyer. His father was a lawyer. And the whole story is it's a fact how he got into the substance and what it did to his life and how he got out of it. It's a gripping story, a real story of how and what drugs can do to you. And I think teachers need to be clued up with this, what they're doing, what they're handling, and how they need to handle drugs with children. And that's why I'm going to hand this over to you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. For all those who don't know yet, Mr. Burrett spends considerable amount of time every week working with underprivileged children, making sure that they don't fall prey to this evil menace of drugs. Our next speaker today, ladies and gentlemen, is Achin Bhattacharyya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. Achin is a fellow of the ICAI and a member of CPA Australia and CPA Ireland. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubha, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, loud and clear.
I once again welcome all of you to today's session. So the picture, unfortunately, is grim. If the world statistics on the drug scenario is taken into account, with a turnover of around $500 billion, it is the third largest business in the world, next to only petroleum and arms trade. So addiction among school-going students is one of the major social problems, not only harmful for them, but also for their families and the society in general. Due to changing social values, any kind of addiction very often have become rite of passage into adulthood, a part of social conditioning. Today, in case of adolescent students, hazardous addiction is significantly associated with severe physical and mental health problems. So the drug business related to violence and crime in the society is frightening, and its influence is alarming. Therefore, it is really important to identify the root cause or factors which are pushing our school-going students to addiction. I think first and foremost, understanding the socio-economic background of addicted students, understanding the impact and causes which leads to addiction, identify the major types of addiction, and equally important, to understand the efforts made by esteemed educators, teachers in schools for eradication of addiction among students, and also to identify the problems which are faced by teachers in the counseling process and implementation of various anti-addiction programs. I think Burrett gave us a wonderful overview. And we also have a galaxy of esteemed speakers today, very experienced and eminent speakers. And I'm sure they'll throw light on these various aspects. A few things that I want to touch upon. So we all agree that drug addiction causes immense human distress. And the illegal production and distribution of drugs have also spawned crime and violence worldwide. It's an entire ecosystem that we're discussing about. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist in isolation. There are various other negative effects as well. Today, there is no part of the world that is free from the curse of drug trafficking and drug addiction. And we all agree that millions of drug addicts are leading miserable lives. Unfortunately, India too is caught in this vicious circle of drug abuse. And the number of drug addicts are increasing day by day. So I was going through a UN report, and not one of the most recent ones. So I'm sure these numbers might have increased even further. It says that 1 million heroin addicts are registered in India. So some point of time came under the radar of law enforcing agencies. 1 million. And these we are discussing about the registered ones. So imagine the actual number. Because I'm sure unofficially there are many more. So what started off as the casual use among a very minuscule population of high income group youth in the metros has actually percolated down to all sections of the society. And inhalation of, for instance, heroin alone has given way to intravenous drug use, that too in combination with other sedatives and painkillers, increasing the intensity of effect as in the process of addiction and complicated the process of recovery. So cannabis, heroin, Indian produced pharmaceutical drugs are the most frequently abused drugs in India. And also, like cannabis products, often like colloquially called charas, bhang, ganja, are abused throughout the country. The International Narcotics Control Board, in its 2002 report released in Vienna, pointed out that in India, persons addicted to opiates are shifting their drug of choice from opium to heroin. So the pharmaceutical products containing narcotic drugs are also increasingly being abused rather. The use of intravenous injections for this purpose are also reported widely from different parts of the country. And it's easily available, very often at a fraction of the cost of heroin, maybe 1/10. Also, the codeine-based cough syrups continue to be diverted from the domestic market for drug abuse. It's a very complex phenomenon, which has various social, cultural, biological, geographical, historical, and economic aspects. The disintegration of the old joint family system absence of parental loves, nuclear families, working parents, real life necessities, decline of social values, moral values. It has led to a rise in the number of drug addicts who take drugs to escape hard realities of life. Of course, nothing can justify this action. But then again, drug use, misuse, or abuse is also primarily, so there's a close correlation, the personality of the individual and the addict's immediate environment. So the process of industrialization, urbanization, migration, people moving to cities, hectic life, have led to losing of the traditional methods that our society always had, and as a very close-knit society that we represented. So naturally, today children are far more vulnerable to the stresses and strains of modern life. I think Burrett also touched upon this aspect beautifully. So the fast changing social milieu, among other factors, is one of the prime contributors to the proliferation of drug abuse, both of traditional as well as new psychoactive substances. The introduction of synthetic drugs, intravenous drugs, and also various other aspects like leading to, for example, HIV/AIDS, has added new dimensions to the problem. Especially, I was going through some reports with regard to northeastern states in India, how there's been a huge challenge, huge problem. Syringes being used led to various other problems, etc. Now, drug abuse has led to detrimental impact on the society. We would all agree, increase in crime rate. And at times, out of desperation, drug addicts resort to crime to pay for their drugs. It really impairs their judgment of right and wrong, and naturally tendency to commit offense. So it leads to increase in incidences of assault, group clashes, impulsive crime, at times serious crime like murder. So apart from affecting financial stability, so the other very important angle is untold emotional pain for every member of the family. And with most drug users being in the productive age group of 18 to 35 years, of course, the problem might start much earlier. Like today, we're discussing about the challenge that we're facing in schools. But the fact that most drug users belong to the productive, age group, so the loss in terms of human potential is huge. The damage to physical, psychological, moral, intellectual growth of our youth is very high. Now, it is estimated that in India, by the time most boys reach 9th grade, most students reach 9th grade, a substantial percentage of them have tried at least one of the gateway drugs. Now, again, as a very insightful report that I went through, it says that 87% of addicts who have been treated in a de-addiction center run by Delhi police acknowledged being violent with family members. And unfortunately, very often, women in India face greater problems because consequences very often lead to domestic violence as well as financial challenges. Now, June 26th every year is celebrated as the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. It is an exercise undertaken by the global community to sensitize people in general and youth in particular to the menace of drugs. Now, if you look at the cause, like we were discussing, which is so important, peer pressure, I believe one of the most important causes, because youth associate with very often so-called friends and the kind of peer pressure. A child tends to have a taste of drugs, and once this is done, they continue to take it. I was reading something very interesting. Curiosity has also been identified as one of the major reasons. So continuously, some or the other friend continuously teasing a child, why don't you try once? And then leads to a lifelong addiction. Depression, again, I think another primary cause. Very often, various causes, which are very natural. We all live in a real world. So anything which is sad, disheartening, and the person starts thinking of the best way for a temporary escape, and the use of hard drugs come in. No, but the effect is so huge: social effect, financial effect, health aspect. Undoubtedly, when we discuss about something like social aspect, the hard drug makes the taker hyperactive at the point of taking, behaving abnormally, contribute to various kind of immoralities. Financial effect, it's a no-brainer. All of us are aware. At times, it can be a huge challenge for the person. We virtually become bankrupt, start searching for money out of desperation, and that leads to, again, a huge long list of crimes. Health effect. The taker, because if you look at the health effect, it's long lasting. And at times, it's so unfortunate. The World Health Organization defines substance abuse as harmful or hazardous use of psychoactive substances, including alcohol and illicit drugs. So psychoactive substances can lead to a dependence syndrome, a cluster of behavioral, cognitive, and physiological phenomena that develop after repeated substance use, and that typically includes a strong desire to take the drug, difficulties in controlling its use, persisting in its use despite harmful consequences. A higher priority is given to drug use than to any other activity or obligation. Increased tolerance and sometimes a physical withdrawal state. So, for instance, if we discuss about physical signs, very, very often, and I'm sure many esteemed educators in this forum who have taken active effort to control this menace are well aware. So be it bloodshot eyes, flushed skin, weight loss, sudden weight loss or gain, impaired speech or coordination, inability to sleep, poor hygiene, behavioral signs, lack of focus, at times lying, deceiving, mood swings, hyperactivity, loss of inhibition, indifference to family or to any obligation, and a feeling of unexplained guilt. And then again, it's a vicious circle, leads to further depression, decline of self-esteem, and at times, very unfortunate, self-hatred, which will lead to self-harming tendencies. I think parents have a huge role to play in this particular area. It's important because there's a very delicate balance between being a positive role model for a child and being overprotective. Because eventually children have to make choices for themselves. However, parents can take some action which can definitely help up to a very large extent. For instance, knowing a child's friends, modeling good behavior, creating a very positive environment at home, keeping communication channels open, talking to the team, finding out what his or her problems are, warning them about peer pressure. And also, I think the other aspect which is very important is to be aware about the practical challenges. How do drugs look like? How are they consumed? How are they stored? Unless until the parents are aware, how will they prevent? For instance, for example, marijuana is generally smoked. This is done by rolling it in paper. Crack cocaine is smoked in glass pipes or snorted, typically using a straw. But then these aspects, I think Birds also referred to it, that giving substantial effort to be aware, to know, which I think is so important. Again, enforcing consequences and monitoring activities. So it is important for all stakeholders of the society to proactively come forward. Of course, schools, teachers have their own role to play. We have a wonderful panel here today. And I really look forward to hear from them on this very important topic. There are various aspects to this topic, and I'm sure they'll throw adequate light to this. So these are some thoughts that I wanted to share. I thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing. Over to you, Shubhai.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, as Achin mentioned, we do have a fantastic panel lined up for you today. But before we go on to the panel discussion, a little bit about Notebook. We at Notebook are an EdTech product. We create short videos tailored to the school curriculum. This means that every child, for every class, and for every subject, every topic, would find videos on our website and mobile apps that they can find useful. Teachers have also been using these videos as part of their classroom. These short videos, which are just 6 to 10 minutes in length, can be played as a visual introduction to the topic that you have planned to teach your students that day. Let me now play a short snippet of one of the Notebook videos for you so that you know exactly what Notebook videos look like.
Footprints Without Feet is a brief excerpt from Wells's novel The Invisible Man, published in 1897. In this story, we come across the character of an eccentric scientist named Griffin. Griffin carried out many experiments to prove that the human body could become invisible. Finally, he swallowed certain rare drugs, and his body became transparent and solid like a sheet of glass. Griffin was a brilliant scientist, but a lawless person. On being thrown out by his landlord, he set fire to the house. He removed all his clothes and became invisible to escape the police. This act rendered him a homeless wanderer without clothes or money. Griffin happened to step in a patch of mud and left footprints as he walked along. These footprints without feet caught the attention of two boys. Griffin easily escaped them. It was a time of midwinter in London, and the air was bitterly cold. Griffin could not wander about without clothes anymore and went into a big London store for warmth. He broke open boxes and wrappers and found warm clothes to cover himself. Griffin got fully dressed and became a visible person. He ate cold meat and coffee and slept on a pile of quilts in the store. In the morning, a couple of store assistants chased Griffin away.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was just a short snippet of one of the Notebook videos. If you head over to our website, www.notebook.school, or to our mobile apps for iOS and Android, you would find more than 10,000 such videos at your disposal. Well, it is now time to introduce the wonderful panel that we have with us today. We are privileged to have with us Ms. Reetika Singh, who is a very well-known educationist. She did her schooling from the prestigious Lawrence School, Kharar, as a meritorious student who excelled in academics, sports, and co-curricular activities, representing the first co-ed school in the world on various platforms, including the IPSC. She did her LLB from the Department of Law, Punjab University, Chandigarh, Masters in English, and a BA, along with a number of courses in guidance and counseling. She was the editor of Rotary Club of Chandigarh Midtown. She has also anchored and acted in shows on television. She began her professional career as a lawyer in the Punjab and Haryana High Court in the office of a senior advocate, until she realized her passion for training and people management. She is also a well-known life skills trainer. In her last assignment, she was highly instrumental in setting up the first international baccalaureate school in the Tri-City, called Oak Ridge International School, Mohali, where she was heading admissions, parent relations, events, and marketing. She was the vice principal with Ashiana Public School, Chandigarh, also imparting life skills training to students and counseling children and their parents. She is currently working as the principal of Hopper International Smart School, Kharar, and is penning her first book as an author. She has been the recipient of multiple awards. To name a few, she was awarded by the Vice Chancellor of Punjab University for meritorious service in the field of education during the Essex Rose Festival in 2015, given the Special Award of Honor for noteworthy contribution to education during the 7th Rose Festival in 2016, honored by the Rotary International with the Nation Builder Award 2016 on the occasion of Teachers' Day and International Literacy Day, and she has been part of the advisory board of LinkCube, which helps build communities of school students around their areas of interest, and she has held that position since August 2021. Ma'am, it's a privilege to have you on the platform. Thank you so much for being here today. We also have with us Dr. Roshan, Bhad, who is currently Assistant Professor of Psychiatry at the National Drug Dependence Treatment Center at the All India Institute of Medical Science, or AIIMS, in New Delhi. He completed his post-graduation in psychiatry in the year 2012 from AIIMS itself and developed an interest in addiction medicine 10 years back during his clinical work in community addiction treatment program and was especially inspired by patients who had dramatic improvement after taking opioid agnostic treatment. He received NIDA ISAM Fellowship Award in 2015 and qualified international certification in addiction medicine in the same year. He was recognized as a fellow of ISAM in year 2019. His areas of clinical or research interests are addictive behaviors among adolescents and youth, community addiction psychiatry, consultation liaison addiction psychiatry, drug policy, and public health. Belonging to a developing country, he aspires to improve the outreach of addiction medicine training and research globally, and particularly in low and middle income countries. He is presently the chairperson of ISAM Next, New Professionals Exploration Training and Education, and ex officio board of director at International Society of Addiction Medicine, or ISAM. Sir, it's an absolute privilege to have you on this platform today. You are our resident expert today. Thank you so much for being here. We also have with us Mr. Sumali Devgan.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. We also have with us Mr. Sumali Devgan, who's the principal of the Doon Girls School in Dehradun, a result-oriented professional with over 35 years of diverse experience in various Indian and international schools, teaching English, history, and music. She's been a dedicated head of schools for many years in Indian and international schools, with a strong work ethic to build lasting relationships with teachers, management, parents, customers, vendors, and the team. She has demonstrated the ability to manage, mentor, and motivate people to perform to their maximum potential. She has exceptional organizational planning skills with the ability to define and improve processes. She is accustomed to working in nurturing environments with the ability to mold people, children, and achieve stable growth of the school environment. She is also a certified piano and music teacher from the Trinity College of Music in London. She has had extensive international experience through working and traveling and is proficient in English, Hindi, Bangla, and possesses basic knowledge of Bhasa, which is the Indonesian language. She is also a confident, articulate, and positive leader who keeps taking her schools to new heights. Ma'am, thank you so much for being here today. Once again, a privilege to have you on this platform. I shall start my video now, stop the share so that we can all see each other. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for making the time for today's event. My first question is actually to Dr. Bhad. Sir, as the doctor who's an expert in this, what are some of the telltale signs that a school should be looking out for in students or groups of students to know if there's a drug problem?
Thank you for inviting me for this wonderful panel discussion. And this is a very good question, actually. I think many of our school counselors, teachers are also attending this meeting. And we have the co-panelists who are also working in the prestigious schools. So I would like to highlight that it is very important to detect substance use problem in adolescents very early. And there are some signs and symptoms which could be easily picked. One of the commonest sign of substance use is absenteeism. So if you find any kid who was regular in school and suddenly stop coming to the school or remaining frequently absent at school, then that is one of the signs you have to look for. Second thing is reduction in academic performance. So that is also important sign, because once the drug use is started and it is increased, usually person devote a lot of time in procuring drugs and under the influence of drugs. So because of that, there is a ignoring of academic work, and it will result in academic decline. So that is one of the another sign. Then other than that, there are behavioral symptoms as well. Like there could be increased irritability, there could be low mood or depression kind of symptoms. There could be violent behavior sometimes also under the influence of some drugs, or odd behaviors. Also, there are some signs of the active drug use. Like if somebody is using cannabis, then there will be redness of eyes and that persists. So that could be easily detected. In fact, the family members detect cannabis use by looking at the red eyes. If the person is using alcohol, then there will be, of course, a smell, and his appearance would be like that. There could be person could be intoxicated. So these are also some of the signs which could be found out. One more thing, what I would like to highlight regarding signs and symptoms is about the inhalant use, because inhalant use is one of the commonest drug used by school-going children. It is they use more often than adults. So many of the students who are using inhalants, you can have the symptoms, like there could be the ulceration of mouth, or there could be smell of the hand and staining on the hand. There could be smell which you could easily see, because the most of the inhalants are very strong smelling, like whiteners, or even the tire puncture tubes. So we get a lot of students, and we get reports from teachers also, that they could see that they can found that kind of smell from the students. Also, you can find actually some of the things hidden in their bags, school bags. So there could be the handkerchief with that inhalants on it. So that also you can sometimes you can get reports of that. So if any of such signs or symptoms are visible, first and foremost thing is actually to also see that are there any more children who are using, because it is a peer activity and many times drugs are used in groups. And if it is there, then immediately consult a school counselor and then refer to the clinical psychologist or psychiatrist for the further assessment and treatment. So that is what I think. Yeah, that answers your question. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So just to clarify, because inhalant would, as you said, would mean something that the child inhales. These would be liquid substances.
Inhalants, it could be inhaled. And inhalants are very common. In every house, there is inhalant, and there are different type of inhalants. Like one is ink eraser fluid, so that is a whitener and colorless fluid. That is addictive properties. Then there is a glues. There are different type of glues, including Fevicol, which is also misused. Then there is a nail polish remover, which contains acetone, which is also addictive. Shoe polish that can also come. So because it is easily available, it is very cheap, and it is available in every house. This is many of the times this is the first substance used by adolescents and young school-going children, and that is how the journey of substances start. Of course, apart from tobacco and cannabis, is also equally important, but inhalant not to be ignored.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I remember the first time I learned about inhalants, it was an eye-opener for me, that in our day-to-day life, things that are just lying around the house, but could actually be used as a drug by somebody. Thank you for clarifying that, sir. Reetika, ma'am, if I may come to you next. We've heard about how you can kind of detect or suspect if there is drug abuse or drug use happening in your school. What are the typical protocols that you would follow once you suspect or know that a student is using?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for providing me with this opportunity. I think that's a very relevant question that you've asked me. At the outset, I would first like to start, by talking a little bit about how, schools cannot completely be held responsible for repairing the social evils. It is about repairing one, which is the evil of ignorance. We all have responsibilities as adults for these evils, but as teachers, we do not need to be ashamed if we can't fix, homelessness or stamp out violence or prevent AIDS or even end the drug abuse. Individual teachers will care as human beings when students use drugs or contract sexually transmitted diseases or adopt poor nutritional practices. But it is not really the fault of schools, and the schools do not need to set targets to change such behavior. Schools can, of course, influence such behavior. The way they do it is through the development of knowledge and skills and cultivation of values in their students. The fact is that schools do not have it in their power to stop smoking, drinking, poor eating patterns. All that they can do is improve student knowledge and skills and to encourage the development of defensible values. Equally, they should not be blamed when students engage in health behavior that is less than desirable. They should be blamed or at least held accountable if students do not gain the essential knowledge and skills regarding health and cannot articulate a value position. It is possible and desirable for school to be concerned with drug demand reduction, drug supply reduction, and mitigating the health and social consequences of drug use, with major focus on demand reduction. However, education authorities should not, accept the sole responsibility for changing student health behaviors, including reducing the drug use. Schools may well be able to influence drug use behavior, and it is hoped that they will do so. However, it is the primary role of the school to teach skills, to impart the knowledge, and to establish sound values based in relation to health and drug use, not to change the behavior that may be determined by factors beyond the influence of school. Now, the educational components of a school drug abuse prevention program, maybe, I can, if I try to enlist them, a program based on the guiding principles for school-based education for drug abuse prevention forms a core component of the school curriculum and focuses on equipping young people with information about drugs, the life skills necessary to enable them to deal with different situations without turning to drugs, the ability to resist pressure to use drugs, and understanding of what drugs are and what they can do to your system. A safe and supportive school environment made possible by a set of clearly communicated policies and procedures that provide care, counseling, and support for all students and ensures a cooperative approach among staff, students, parents, and related professionals, agencies, and school-based education for drug abuse prevention. Strategies for ensuring that all members of the school community contribute to and support the school policies and procedures for dealing with the drug matters. Appropriate professional development and training for the relevant staff, information and support for parents, in particular, parents of students involved in illicit and unsanctioned drug use, mechanisms for continuous monitoring and review of the school's approach to education for drug abuse prevention and incident management. Now, see, it is most important because we as educators can only do a certain amount. We have to work hand in hand with parents. Like Dr. Bhad has very nicely put across, that we need to figure out, check the absenteeism, check with parents as to how their behavior at home is. Are they deviant in their behavior? Know more about their peer group. Try to understand, if at all, because see, children would always be in a denial mode. They will never accept that, yes, for a high or to fit in or to stand out, I just want to try it for a bit. So it is very important for the school counselor to work in close sync with all children. You cannot single out children or get them into a confined environment and talk to them. It has to be with all the student community at large. So the school can only do a certain bit. Our role comes in trying to spread awareness, do skill building. Beyond that, it is very difficult to, because I head a day school. So I've studied in a boarding school, but I head a day school. So children are with us only for 8 hours of the day. That's when we can keep a complete check on them, work in close sync with parents. But that is with parents who are willing to lend us an ear. A lot of times we have parents who do not have time for their children. So there it becomes very difficult to, make the child understand. So that's where the counselor's role comes into play. Now, the biggest concern with majority schools is a lot of them don't have counselors in place. So the main important role of a counselor is to work in very close sync with children, lend them an ear, be compassionate, be more understanding, empathize, and then, try and work towards helping them to overcome the situation. So in my opinion, I think it's very important for teachers to be more of role models, to, work closely with parents to overcome this kind of a menace.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. I will now get across to Ms. Devgan. Sumali, ma'am, thank you so much for being here. Ma'am, Dehradun does have a history, as Burrett sir was saying, of students somehow getting their hands, especially on inhalants. Do you have a certain protocol in place if you suspect a student of using?
Yeah, well, most of the schools, I mean, I wouldn't say my school in particular has faced this kind of a problem, but yes, definitely it is there in most of the schools and many of the so-called reputed schools also. So I think we need to keep in mind that in day schools, I mean, boarding schools, of course, they are with us 24/7 almost. In day schools also, see, most of the child's waking hours is spent in school, right? So therefore, it is important for to develop a more positive relationship with the teachers and the students, and also, make sure that the children are involved, as Mr. Burrett also said, get into a lot of activities like sports and things. So yes, extracurricular activities, etc., are very important. right? Because once the children are involved, then at least their mind is set over there. They don't, think about these things, although it's not as easy because they do fall into peer pressure a lot of times, right? So they are young minds. They want to experiment also in many cases. So I think in school also teachers, like Mrs. Reetika Singh just said also, teachers must be role models and speak very openly to the children, answer a lot of their misconceptions that children have. Because young children probably feel it's okay to do it. There's nothing wrong, right? So one has to speak, reveal the facts very openly without, I think, making it into a very serious lecture. There should be no lecturing because children get put off by those sort of things. Also, schools at the time of admission, I mean, they must make it very clear what their policies are regarding this. And like Mr. Burrett said, I agree with him, sometimes, okay, things like smoking and alcohol, all right, you can get off with some warnings. But I think most schools do have a zero tolerance for drugs, right? And I can refer to one particular incident that happened in one of the very prestigious schools, a boarding school also, where the child, I mean, young man he was, a 17-year-old. Now, he sees his father taking substance, right? But the father is a very mature, sensible person who knows how to balance things, right? And father is a big celebrity. So the son didn't think anything wrong because he saw his father doing it in front. It was all open. Father never hid it. So if the child sees that the parents are doing this, are taking this, kind of substance, to him, it's okay. My father is a world figure, right? My father is a celebrity. And if he can take these joints, it's okay. So he tried it. Of course, being zero tolerance, he was expelled from school in his final year. So that was a bit of a tragedy. So I think, yes, firstly, as I said, the school policies must be very clear. Boundary lines have to be drawn and very clear-cut rules have to be set. And in the course of the school year, teachers must be role models. And as I said, speak frankly to the children, not lecture them all the time about the evils of drugs. I think that should, and of course, children should be involved in a lot of extracurricular activities and sports in school. Yeah.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you so much for that. I will now get across back to Dr. Bhad. Sir, let's say the school has discovered a problem of drug use by a child, and the child is now referred to you. What are the typical steps that you follow?
See, drug use is a very sensitive issue. So first of all, there will be problem from parents resistance from parents that my kid is not using or it's not a problem at all. For students also, they will try to hide the problem and they are unlikely to disclose openly to the teachers and things because of some schools may have the zero policy and they could lose their admission there. So it is difficult to detect, but if the school counselors are good, they are well trained and they have the good rapport with the students, most of the students will come up and they will also tell about the problems as well as if they are using substance, they will disclose. When we come across the students who are using drugs, so we get all kind of patients. We get adolescents who are using in a small quantity or who are actually using in large quantity and already dependent or addicted to particular drugs. So depending upon the severity of drug use, we give the intervention. For example, if the substance use is very small, then we something called harm reduction strategies. That is what we use. If the harm reduction and brief intervention, that is what we advise. If the substance use is severe and in dependent pattern, then admission is also warranted. One of the assessment is also to see if there is a psychiatric morbidity, like there could be depression, there could be underlying anxiety disorders, and many times you will have to address that problem because substance use may be secondary to the depression. For example, if the student is having some stressor at home, he's having some loss at home or some pressure, or he's not able to handle the academic pressure, it could lead to the adjustment problem or depression, and that could lead to the substance use because substance use temporarily relaxes you, and temporarily it gives the false sense of relaxation. So because of that, many students are introduced to the drugs. So it is important to find out what is the underlying problem. In many cases, it could be just a family history and genetic factor as well. If the father is using, or the brother is using, or family members are using, then also there is a high risk for substance use. So the assessment includes comprehensive assessment of the person or the student himself or herself and family, and also we also interview the school counselors, and we also see sometimes that if there's any strategies in a school which is not if there's a more problem, or if there is a students are not able to handle the pressure, so that kind of intervention is also sometimes planned. So it is a multi dimensional assessment and intervention. That is what we do for the substance use in students, because it's a complex problem and it has many dimensions. It is not a very simple problem. Most of the students, they do not just use a drug. There are a number of reasons for that, and that could be in number of domains. So it is important to comprehensively assess and manage the problem.
Thank you, sir. If I may ask you a follow-up question. So now, depending on the severity, the duration of treatment would also vary, right? But after the treatment, this is a child, a young student, who would need to get reintroduced to the school system. But now there is a lot of stigma attached to it, right? This rumor has now spread across school, people know. How is the student made mentally resilient enough to handle that part?
Yes, it is a very important question, and stigma is a very important issue. Not only the other kids, but the other parents or even teachers will have stigma. They will look in a different way if somebody is using a drug. And many times, actually, in our society, we see drug users as the criminals or some committing sin kind of things. But we must understand that it is a brain disorder. There are changes in the brain. There are neurotransmitter and chemical changes. Because of that, person consume drugs, and person has to take drugs to control withdrawals and craving. So it is a brain disorder. And we have the good medications now. We have the psychotherapy interventions available which can solve it. Regarding the stigma, increasing the awareness and knowledge about the drug use and treatments available, early detection and referral, I think that are the key for the reducing the stigma about that. When people are openly talking, and if there are events organized and already students are aware, then the stigma would be less, because we get a lot of students also bringing their friends for the substance use problem. So they are aware, they know that something is going wrong. So they also sometimes refer, or they tell to the school counselor that please see, is my friend and he's having some problem. So that is actually, I think, something more need to be done regarding that, reducing the stigma. And the best thing would be to increase the awareness about the treatment available, and as a problem as a whole, that is a brain problem, and it could be solved with the appropriate intervention.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope even this webinar is a step in the right direction to increasing the awareness level. Reetika ma'am, if I may come to you once again. The question that I asked sir about stigma. Let's say you have a student who's gone through treatment for drug abuse, and wants to carry on with the education, wants to get back into your school. How would you typically manage this aspect where others need to be sensitized?
All right. Yeah, hi. All right. See, it is very important if the person has accepted and is willing to bounce back. The most important thing that we as educators can do is offer compassionate support. We need to display kindness to people in vulnerable situations. Listening without judgment, that is the key. A lot of times,
Ritika ma'am, are you there? I think a video is frozen. Achin, could you just confirm if that's at her end, or sorry ma'am, I think we lost you for a second there.
am I audible now?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So coming back to where I was, see, it's very important to offer compassionate support, and we need to display kindness to people in their vulnerable situations. Like I said, listening without judgment is the key. A lot of times people don't open up out of this fear that, they would be judged, that people would form opinions about them. So we need to see the person for who they are and not for the drugs that they use. We first, as teachers and counselors, need to do our research, learning about drug dependency and how it works, and then working closely with the school counselor and with the psychiatrist or the clinical psychologist, treating people with drug dependency with dignity and respect. The first thing that schools need to ensure is avoid any kind of hurtful labels, because what happens in schools categorically is we label people very easily, and that is something we need to really avoid. We need to replace the negative attitudes with evidence-based facts, and most importantly, we need to speak up when somebody is mistreated because of their drug use. We need to help them overcome the situation. We don't need them to, further push them into depression. So it's very important that, we need to stop this perpetuating, we need to stop perpetuating the stigma of addiction. We need to get to know more, talk about it, show compassion, recognize addiction as a medical condition. And it's whatever medical condition one may have, it could even be a heart disease. It is all curable. So I'm sure this is also curable. Let's not label children. Let's not, push them further. We need to communicate with care. We need to offer information and help them to find the professional resources. A lot of times they don't know who to reach out to. They've gotten into this problem, but they don't know how to come out of it. So we need to offer them support, and we need to set boundaries for them. If they continue to refuse the treatment, we need to be loving but firm. We need to remain committed. Removing alcoholism and all other temptations from their house and social life, that is important. For that, like I said earlier, we need to partner with their parents. We're all working towards a common cause, that is the growth and development of children. So we need to encourage, other healthy activities, like it could be exercise, it could be a hobby. Like Mr. Philip had very rightly said that we probably need to push them into something that they're more passionate about. So let the addiction not be drugs. Let the addiction be some sport or anything that helps them sleep better. So I think that's one way that we can help children recover and battle this menace.
Wonderful, ma'am. I think that whole attitude about listening without judgment is so basic and yet so important. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Devgan, if I may come to you next time. You spoke about a certain instance where a student was expelled. If you have to reintroduce students who want to kind of carry on with the education after they have had this problem, how would you do that? What is that strategy?
Yes, I totally agree with what Reetika said, right? Because one thing, unfortunately, that does happen in schools is a branding of children, right? And I personally do not approve of that. One should not do that. And I think even if a child has got into this a little bit of a mess, if there is treatment, of course there is treatment, it can be treated and all, we need to give a second chance, definitely. Listen, I firmly believe, listen without any judgment, right? That is very, very important. And yeah, try in every which way to bring that child out of that, that hole that he's fallen into. With counseling, getting him or her more involved in activities and sports, all things that can take his mind off. Yes, definitely. And of course, in schools, confidentiality is very important. There's no need to publicize these things. If we have discovered a child has this issue, I think it must be kept very confidential between the authorities, maybe just the teacher concerned and the parents, etc. I mean, other children should not be told about it, should not be publicized, because it is very hurtful to the family and to the child who's trying to get out of it. So definitely, yes, we must maintain this confidentiality. Respect that child and the family also.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Let's just take a step back and go back to something that Reetika ma'am spoke of earlier. That the school's responsibility primarily is education, removal of ignorance. On that vein, schools do undertake a lot of anti-drug education. Even when without suspect that a student is using, or if there's a drug problem in the school, schools do proactive stuff to ensure that students don't fall prey to this menace. Ma'am, what are your schools doing regarding that?
Yeah, I know some schools have these programs. They bring in experts will talk. And I personally don't think that really makes too much of an impact. I've seen enough senior students also. Like I said, if the moment you start lecturing and sermonizing, they will get put off. And I think it is the duty of the teachers on a regular basis that to keep chatting with them, explaining to them the evils of this drug abuse, of drug menace, and also to develop, everyone keeps talking about developing the child's IQ. I think what is more important to develop the EQ, to make them so right from a very early stage. Children have to be told. But we do what is called the life skills in our school, which I think is a brilliant session which is done. And all these things are directly, indirectly referred to. We're building up their EQ so that they don't fall prey very easily into these kind of evils and menaces. Yeah. So I personally don't think those things really work. And also, why are we overloading the children with so much information? Because any professional who comes and does these, these talks, how much are they actually taking in? Most children don't, So these things don't really work very well. It's a kind of a scare tactic, which doesn't go down very well with senior kids. I have noticed this, definitely. I mean, they will listen patiently. They've been made to sit there. But I think half an hour later, it's all gone off their heads. Yeah. So I don't think. I think it's more on the teachers themselves should be role models and counselors. And like I said, keep talking to them. If they have facts which they are not very sure of, or they have wrong facts, well, correct them. In a systematic way also, just don't lecture all the time. Older kids don't take very well to that. See? So, yeah.
Wonderful, ma'am. I mean, this approach goes right to the heart of the situation, right? Rather than treating it symptomatically, you are teaching them life skills and giving them that sense of right and wrong.
Yes, life skills is a very, very important part of our curriculum. And I'm happy to say that it really works very well. So.
It will, because I remember there was a research that said that the pre-movie ads that we show about anti-smoking, that made people who smoke want to smoke more.
Yeah.
So they were not really effective.
Absolutely right. And I've noticed even in smokers, you try talking, and they'll react very badly, you see. And I've noticed also with older kids, if you show them these PPTs on the evils of drugs, and they'll show all kinds of things happening, it doesn't go down very well, like I said, and basically what are we doing? We're trying to scare them. It doesn't go well with them. It works better if we talk to them and, like I said, build up their EQ so that they don't have to resort, even if there are causes, there are problems at home or whatever, they need not resort to this. And if they are into sport and activities they're passionate about, their minds will be taken off that. That's what.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Reetika, ma'am, if I may come to you next. Is in your school, do you have any such anti-drug campaigns? I remember Say No to Drugs was a big thing in American schools about a couple of decades back. Do you have something like that happening?
So Bhayu, see, my school as of now is only up to grade 4, so it is a little too early to start with such campaigns. But yes, at my stint with Ashiana, where besides being the vice principal, I was also the school counselor. I did have students coming to me sharing their concerns, and a lot of times I think it percolated down to the fact that a lot of them did not have parents who lent them an ear. Like Sumali ma'am very rightly said, at this age and stage, children don't require instructions. They need to be spoken to. They need to be made to feel, like one of us, so that they can open up, share their concerns with us. But yes, of course, going forward as my school grows, we will definitely be having more of such kind of campaigns. But yes, we do undertake a lot of these social activities wherein we do go to government schools, we do impart education. We try to do our bit. Like I said at the very outset, that schools can only do a certain bit. And our role, our role comes in where we can only educate children, build their skills, and it's only thereafter. See, a lot of times, so what happens is we do our bit, we educate children, but yet the influences are such that even the education, somehow takes a backseat. So yeah, these campaigns are important, and it is very important for people around also to be as accepting of such deviant behaviors. We don't need to label and typecast. So I totally agree with Somani ma'am on what she had to say. So these campaigns are important, yes, of course. And it's too early in my school as of now, but a lot of schools do run such campaigns, and I've been a part of it in the past.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Bhad, I will come to you. So this is where I ask you the master question, right? What do we do? There's clearly a problem that needs addressing. There's clearly awareness that needs spreading. And schools are willing to partner with this because it affects them very, very directly. What are the steps that we should follow to uproot this problem?
I agree with both the panelists, Sumali ma'am and Reetika ma'am also. So there is different approaches. Like there could be, school children, and then there is adolescents who are 8, 9, 10 grade, 11, 12 grade. So they will have the different personality or behavior, and you need to use a different strategy for both of them. Lecturing may be good for the young kids, but for those who are in teens, it is very difficult to, as rightly pointed out, it's difficult to, lecture them. But as a partner or as a friend, you will have to talk, and you will have to understand their problems, and you need to talk as a friend. So that is the thing. Other than having the more dialogues and interaction, we have to see what are the reason for substance use. So as per the research available and what we see, the most of the patients coming here, it seems that the escapism or stress, unmanaged stress, is one of the important reasons for starting substance use, followed by peer pressure, and then family history of substance use, or easy availability of substance use. So for easy availability of substance use, school can take steps and reduce the availability of substance use in a campus, or there are laws also now with which actually substance use availability should not be there even near the schools or college campuses. Regarding family history of substance use, if there is a history of family history of substance use and school is aware of that, then they need to be more careful and cautious about such students or such kids, and need to see the warning signs if there are any, and if there are signs, then need to be referred to the school counselors. Regarding peer pressure, group psychotherapy or group activities, having the programs in groups are usually beneficial. Most important thing is the stress. Stress is the reason for starting substance use often. That is what we get to know from the students. So having the stress management workshops, or balancing the capacity of the student with the demand, because we cannot treat all the students in the same yardstick. Some students may be very sharp and easy to pick, and there are some students who are lagging behind and taking more effort or need of more time. So goal cannot be equal for all of them. But in our usually system, what happens that there is a goal is same and everybody has to cross that line. But that may not be true things. So we need to, little balancing is required, and we need to see that there may be some students who are not able to manage with the demand. So for them, goal needs to be modified, or they may need a more support and different techniques. So that actually school, I think, can do, and school counselors can identify such kind of things, which will help in prevention and starting the problem itself. So that is the thing actually I would suggest to teachers and counselors.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that. If I may just ask a follow-up question, sir. Right now, students are exposed to a lot of online content, right? Classes are happening online. They have access to phones and laptops, and they are consuming a lot of content which unfortunately glorifies drug use. How do you combat that? Because now they have star role models engaging in such behavior.
This is very important question, and this is happening because of the increasing internet activities and going through the whatever information overload happening. So see, there are drug markets which are going to promote the drugs, like alcohol industries, tobacco industries, cannabis industry, marijuana industry. So there is a lot of information that how it is helpful and how it helps to improve the concentration, and how it can help in academic performance and things. At the same time, there is a public health experts and approaches, including WHO, saying that it should not be encouraged and it is harmful and it can cause a problem. So the access to the information need to be controlled, and I think not only the parent teachers, but the bigger role here is actually of the government and policymakers to have the some control over the information available, because currently the information available is largely unregulated. In fact, one of the coming, if you see the World Drug Report, which is published in last year and this year also, the use of darknet for purchasing the drugs and using is increased very much. So there are some websites which are with the unique IDs, and you can order the drugs and you can get a home delivery of drugs at home only. And these are beyond the control of the authorities because they have the mechanism there. So there are problems. So with the increase in digital technology and reach, increasing internet speed and things, this has also problem has come, and we all have to sit together and see how it can be controlled. But for parents or for the teachers, counselors, I think some restricted use of internet should be there, only for the limited to educational activities, or preference of the offline material, and not to give the unrestricted internet use would be suggestible whenever possible. And even if the internet use is allowed, it should be supervised till at least the teenage and I know it is very difficult, and it may be sounding like a very traditional or kind of thing, because all this, even the nursery students are now going to the online schools, and they are also attending to the Zoom and attending the Meet. But we need some control, because there are bad things there also, and students can go in that way also. So some supervision or some restricted use. Like I would suggest that parents are also now working from home, so they can actually sit and they can also sit together and work, and they can also see what they are surfing, and also see the history, what they have surfed, or search history kind of thing. So that would give some idea that what is the interest of the students, and whether he's actually only accessing the educational material, or there are some things which are problematic and need to be taken care of. So that is what my suggestion is.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that. I understand this is a much bigger topic, and to perhaps cover all facets of it, we'll need perhaps a 24-hour session. Unfortunately, due to paucity of time, I'll have to thank all of you and end this discussion here. We have had some very important takeaways. We have learned that awareness is very, very important. We have learned that empathy is very, very important. We need to create positive role models for our young students. We need to give them great life skills and teach them that their energies are better utilized elsewhere. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Well, I will now leave the official vote of thanks to Achin, but this has been a fantastic learning experience for me personally. Achin, take it away.
Really a wonderful session. I thank all our esteemed panelists for their time, for gracing the platform. I think very, very useful session. And I'm sure our esteemed audience as well must have gained from the session. A lot of very insightful discussion. But sir, thank you as always. I think your experience as a house master and how you have actually dealt with this challenge has been very, very practical and useful. And also, sir, I completely agree with you, and I'm sure so do our all esteemed fellow panelists and members of the audience, that activities like outdoor sports, activities like love for sports, outdoor sports, etc., is so important to counterbalance this challenge. So I think, sir, wonderfully put across this particular point. Dr. Bhad, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time and for giving us some really useful information. I think sign or symptoms, the way you started the discussion, I think that has been very, very useful. And I'm sure our esteemed audience, many esteemed educators, they have taken notes. It will be really practically useful for them. So I indeed thank you for that. And also how you connected that with peer activity, because naturally this kind of thing doesn't exist in isolation. So we need to identify the problem at a group level as well. And also how, I think day-to-day, things that are around us that easily a child can get access to, and how they can actually have a negative influence. So the parents need to be much more careful. Also, I think with regard to the last part of the discussion, access to information in today's age. So technology works both ways. It's a boon as well as a bane. And there are challenges. We all live with it. So I think, yes, I think all of us as stakeholders of the society, of the civil society, we need to be careful to ensure that technology is not misused. Because till the time a child has the kind of maturity to understand the difference between good and bad, I think it's our responsibility as well to step in. I think really wonderful discussion. I sincerely thank you for that. Thank you so much, sir. Sumali ma'am, thank you so much for being a part of this. Ma'am, whenever you have been a part of this August panel, we have always learned from your wealth of experience. I sincerely thank you for that. I think you very beautifully defined it that most waking hours of a child's working day is spent in the school. And so the importance of school, importance of teachers, educators in the overall growth process. And also, I think you touched upon some very important aspects like role of family, which is so important, how a child learns from behavior of parents, actions of parents, and the importance of giving a second chance, of being non-judgmental. So of course, we all agree with you that lecturing alone won't help. So developing EQ is so important, life skills as we defined it. So I think really wonderful, ma'am. I thank you so much for being a part of this. We indeed look forward to your wisdom in future sessions as well. Reetika, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Reetika, ma'am, thank you for, I think you very beautifully defined the role of educators, the role of school in the overall growth process of the child, which is so important, which is more holistic, and also the importance of compassionate support, like listening without judgment, and avoid labeling, which doesn't help, which only harms. We all agree with you on that. And also the importance of continuous learning for teachers and counselors as well. So unless until they are updated, the parents are updated, how do they actually deal with this? So I think really wonderful discussion we had. We really found value in it. A lot of great points. I thank members of the esteemed audience as well for their time here today evening. Thank you. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.